Hi, everybody. We have a great show for you today. We have two of our Exceptional Women awardees. Celia Ramos is a senior client executive and managing partner at Accenture. She has a lot to tell us about working with very large technology companies and managing huge teams. And with her, we have Cora. Tamara is former senior finance executive at Quantcast and now is redesigning her life potentially to be a chief operating officer at a tech company soon. So we're going to hear from these ladies about what it's like to be women in technology, women in finance, and women managing great teams. I'm Lorraine Siegel. I'm the chair, founder, and CEO of the Exceptional Women Awardees Foundation. We enable high-level women to reach their dreams. Why did I start this foundation? Well, I never had a mentor. Early in my career as a lawyer and then as a CEO of multiple companies, even as a board director, I never had somebody to help guide me on my way. And I wanted to be sure that women who walk the road less traveled, just like Celia and Tamara do, and I do as well, that those women would always have a group of women leaders to enable them to reach their dreams. And that's exactly what we do at the Exceptional Women Awardees Foundation. So let me introduce again our wonderful guests today, Tamara, Cora, and Celia Ramos. Welcome, ladies. Good to have you both with us. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to go straight to you, Celia, and I want to find out a little bit about your beginnings, because you were not born in the US and you came here like I did as an immigrant. Tell us a little bit about that and how that took you into your career.
Sure, Lorraine. Hi, everyone. So as Lorraine mentioned, I'm originally from the Philippines and I immigrated when I was 17 years old. My mother expected me to follow in her footsteps and become a doctor, taking over her medical practice in the Philippines. But early on, I knew that medicine was not my calling. I really wanted to carve out my own path. So I majored in economics in college. College was very much an empowering experience for me. I became financially independent and found ways to pay for my education. And that included working 40 hours a week while carrying a full course load when I was in college. After college, I worked in accounting and claims operations for a major insurance company. And after a few years, I knew that to take my career forward, I needed to get an MBA. I went on to study finance at NYU, and this was definitely a turning point for me. I was exposed to a range of careers and introduced to management consulting. So, Lorraine, I became a strategy consultant, not really understanding what that meant. And at the time, I viewed consulting as a 2-year stop in my journey. And fast forward to 2022, I'm still very excited to work with clients, defining new strategies, working with them on innovation, building executable solutions, and addressing their biggest challenges.
Well, we're going to come back to you on that because there's a lot in that statement, especially the last things that you mentioned, Celia. I mean, you could write a book on all of that. And I know that you have the insights and the experience to do that. But we have Tamara back every now and then because she's having technical difficulties. But Tamara, while we have you in, and hopefully we don't lose you again, let me ask you a little bit about your background and what led you into the world of finance.
Well, really what led me to finance was the fact that I love math, and I also wanted to understand decision-making within companies. So naturally, I thought finance would be a good step to having my hands in each part of the business and also lead me to a global career, which I was definitely very interested in.
So talk about the global career, because I know that you've had some amazing experiences, which most people would be terrified to go and do what you did. So tell us how that happened.
Well, my global career actually catapulted in 2008 during the global financial crisis. I had accepted a job offer with a regional investment bank based out of Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. I had taken the job in July, markets had crashed in August, but yet I still joined the firm in October. And that led me to an exciting career in finance at a very challenging time for the whole world economically. And really was exciting for me to do business across the Gulf countries, East Africa, and South Asia.
So Tamara, talk a little bit about that? Because obviously the way women function in local women function in those cultures is very different from Western women. Did that affect you, and did it affect you within the workplace?
I would say that there actually was a positive bias towards me in the workplace. In the United Arab Emirates, I was seen as a differentiated employee and business leader, given that I was a Western educated, multiple degrees, and also a different opinion while at the boardroom table with board members and also executives at companies making decisions. So I actually had a very interesting and enriching experience working out in the Middle East, because frequently I would have executives calling me asking for my opinions and my recommendations based on the analysis that I run. And I've had more exposure to top decision makers working in the Emirates versus in investment banking in JP Morgan within San Francisco. So that's a surprising thing that I found.
Amazing. And I think that's going to bode very well for your future, because having a global experience is essential, I think, in being a top executive. And as your move, the next move is going to be to Chief Operating Officer. Hopefully we think that should be a global company who would really be able to use your talents. So Celia, back to you for a moment. You advise very large companies in the technology space. So what would you say are some of the trends that you see right now post-pandemic?
So Lorraine, I think we're all aware of the economic uncertainty, inflation, softening demand. So what's really top of mind for executives right now in the tech sector are really, I call it the 3 Ps, right? One is profitability, the second is productivity, and the third one is product performance.
So unpack that a little bit for me. Go back to the first one and give me a few more beats on that.
Sure, Lorraine. And profitability is really focused on more rigorous planning, budgeting, and forecasting to manage the top line and also the bottom line. And given some ongoing supply chain challenges, executives are really looking at applying and thinking about what the impact on the financials would be given some of these supply chain challenges. So profitability is really anchored on the business case, right? Are we making the right investments, and is it driving the right ROI? On the productivity front, the pandemic really challenged the traditional approaches to operations, operating models, and ways of working. And we are seeing an uptick in investments in automation, digital technologies to continue to eliminate manual and low value activities, right? In addition, leaders are looking at eliminating complexity within functions and between functions. And the third P is the more, I would say, interesting one, which is the product performance. There's definitely more scrutiny on product performance and a bigger push for innovation and value creation. So there are a lot of fundamental questions being asked. Are the products that we have meeting customer needs? Are sales and pricing strategies optimizing margins? Are there gaps in the product set that the companies need to drive more top-line growth, as well as increase customer stickiness? So those are the 3 Ps that are top of mind, Lorraine.
Brilliant. And so if you were an employee working in a company that was one of your clients, what would you say to that employee in terms of how to skill themselves for the future to be a value-added contributor, a productive contributor?
Yeah, so Lorraine, I think it's going back to analytics, right? There's definitely a need across different industries for analytics capabilities. Really understanding also what are these digital technologies that are going to make a difference in the future, and also making sure that you're building your teams, right? You're taking the teams along with you for the journey. People development is very much top of mind, and defining what that future of work is and how we improve and drive higher performance from our teams and employees is going to be what's critical going forward for future leaders.
And probably the most difficult thing for a leader and a manager to actually put together. So, Tamara, back to you for a moment, because when I think about your journey from Abu Dhabi and then to JP Morgan in San Francisco, you had a culture change and probably a culture shock in a way. Tell us a little bit about that, and what was it that enabled you to think about the next step in your career?
The culture shock that I experienced coming from the UAE to the US and working in tech was surprisingly one where I had to find ways that were creative to butt into conversations and avoid being talked over. I also found that because of the time that I'd spent in the United Arab Emirates, around 3.5 years, I was being increasingly pigeonholed as someone when I was doing informational interviews with local, that is, US-based firms, that most frequently they were interested in putting me in investor relations types of positions and fundraising, whereas I was more interested in the analytics and deal side of the business. So it really took a lot of nose to the grindstone, hard work, networking, and ultimately led me to JP Morgan within San Francisco, and it gave me an exposure to a much larger platform, different deal capabilities that. When you're working with a smaller bank that doesn't have such underwriting capabilities, that limited me from being involved in such activities like IPOs, helping to finance large M&A transactions and large syndicated debt transactions. Broadly speaking, though, I knew as an American, I wanted to come back to the United States and not be pigeonholed as a Middle East expert.
Right. Well, what an amazing experience. And then you moved into a finance role within a tech company. So again, another culture change. What was attractive to you about that position, and how did you sort of grow into that?
I came into my position, which at that point in time was manager within FP&A, as I looked at my long-term career prospect within investment banking, the lifestyle that it would give me, and realized that I really enjoyed my time most as an operator of a business and rolling up my sleeves and working cross-functionally to drive solutions. And the stage that we were at as a company is we were revenue generating for close to 3 years when I had joined my prior firm, Quantcast. And what I found really great about it was like that experience was that I was really designing completely new solutions from scratch, working with engineers and product managers, client services and sales teams to understand how to build technology solutions internally, data systems, and best use resources within the finance group to enable growth and efficient use of our resources across the company. All in all, I just thought it was a more fun and interactive experience.
It sounds to me like you're exactly the kind of employee that Celia was saying every company should be looking for, which is somebody who understands analytics, has a head for finance, and also the people skills that you have, which is just fantastic. If you had to give some advice to an employee who had a good head for numbers and was interested in finance, how do you move into a senior finance role? What are some of the characteristics that a company would look for, and how do they blend themselves into that?
I would say that for myself, when I am looking for members to join my team, of course, there's the bread and butter finance and analytics background that someone has. That just gets you a place at the table. Really, I'm looking for people who have an innate curiosity for life, a can-do attitude to be resourceful, and general excitement to take on new concepts. Because especially in a startup-ish environment, the path for you isn't paved. So you have to be able to think on your feet, be efficient with using your resources, and be a great team player. Because inevitably, when you're also doing things that are brand new, there are going to be things that are going to go wrong. But when you have that level of trust with your teams and understanding that you're doing the best given the information and resources at hand, enables you to have a great rapport and build for the future. So, these finance skills just get you a place at the table, but actually to join my team, I look more for the inherent characteristics.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And we're going to come back to you, Celia, on the teams aspect, because I know you manage very large teams. But I do want to encourage our audience to put in questions, because we love to have them. And after we get a comment from Celia, we're going to ask some of the questions to be put up. So Celia, back to you for a moment. You manage great teams, amazing teams, very brilliant people. How do you put that together? What are some of the tips you would have for people who are beginning to manage large teams in tech companies in particular?
So Lorraine, this is an interesting question for me, actually, because I went from managing teams of up to 50 to now managing a global team of thousands. So I had to make some adjustments to my style and how I drove performance, but also how I inspired my teams to be the best that they can be. And I think I would say with a shift to managing a global team of thousands, one of the biggest things I had to learn was to work with my next layer of leadership and to make sure that we are aligned on what our goals are. First and foremost, what do we need to achieve for Accenture, but also for our clients? Secondly, we had to get alignment on how we help our people grow and develop, right? What are the skills that are going to be critical for them to be successful, not only in their current role, but also in future roles? And third is alignment on how do we identify future leaders and how do we help them get there? So those are, to me, probably the biggest shifts that I had to experience as a leader transitioning from localized, big teams, right? 50 plus people to thousands.
And I think that your experience as an immigrant would have helped you. Is that right, Celia? Just understanding different cultures?
Absolutely, Lorraine. I think for me as an immigrant, I've had to adapt. I've had to, change a lot. I think what makes me really proud of my immigrant background is really my ability to adjust, adapt, and listen, right? And take that feedback, frankly, and pay it forward as well. I think I've been very much rewarded over my career. I never thought I would be where I would be right now, where I am right now, and I just want to pay it forward. And that's what I hope other leaders are thinking about as they move into these more senior leadership roles.
And we certainly see you paying it forward at EWA too, which is wonderful. And thank you for that. So let's put up some of the questions that have been coming in and see if we can include our audience in this. Ave, I hope if I'm saying your name right, Ave, apologies if not, from Palm Springs. She wants to know, do you work with boards? And if so, what finance skills do you need to be considered with one? So let's start with Celia on that, and then we'll go to you, Tamara, as well. Celia, what's your thought on that?
Yes, I have 2 points of views on that. One is I do have clients who are board members and boards. So in that role, I give them advice, Lorraine, on more strategic elements, right? So what are some of the strategic priorities that they could be thinking about? How do they organize, govern, and be more effective as board people? On the other side of that, I am a board member of 2 nonprofits. And my role in those nonprofits, it's very much finance oriented. It's helping those nonprofits think about and set their vision for the future, right? What are their strategic priorities going to be? Helping them to think about really how do they get clean audits, right? Some pretty practical things along that front. Definitely bringing together a combination of strategy, finance, and operational knowledge is what I'm understanding from my board roles is really what they value, right, in board members.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's many boards, and I think in nonprofits it's different from public boards. In many boards, it's really noses in and fingers out, which means that you give oversight but you don't actually get into the operational tactical details. And that's exactly right. So Tamara, instead of going to you with that question, there's another one that just came in, which I think has absolutely got your name on it. And that's from Matt in Seattle. He says, I work in finance and I find folks in other functions see me as a gatekeeper. What do you think about that, Tamara?
Yeah, that's actually a traditional view of finance people. What I would say is that to mitigate this perception, and I think it's very challenging, especially nowadays in the hybrid work environment, or even fully remote in some companies, is you have to build the curiosity and rapport with those different areas of the business on a non-transactional basis. So in other words, you have to be able to build a relationship that doesn't feel threatening, and you're checking in and really showing that you have a genuine interest without being a gatekeeping money pincher, and rather that you're there as a finance professional to help execute on the overall initiatives of the company and make sure that both sides are speaking with each other. So for instance, if sales is working on a new initiative with marketing on how to target better their customers, and you know from other conversations that the product marketing group has a go-to-market strategy that potentially isn't as well aligned, you can bring that value by saying, hey, you know, I was speaking with so-and-so in product marketing, and they're working on XYZ initiative. Maybe it would be a good idea for you two to sync together. Let me do an email introduction and you guys can take it from there. So that's how you're generating value outside of a transactional basis, building trust within the organization. And soon, with your actions aligning with your words around not being a gatekeeper, you're able to show yourself as a trusted strategic partner who's looking to help the business rather than just pinching pennies.
That's so true. And when I was in alliances consulting business, we used to talk about internal alliances, and they are as important as external alliances. The only difference is externally you can choose your partners and internally you cannot. So sometimes you have to partner with people you don't like very much or even don't trust. But if you follow through and do what you said you were going to do, you can generally create a pretty good partnership. And that is absolutely essential to make it cross-functional relationships work. So absolutely well done on that. There is a couple other questions. I don't want to leave them out. So let's bring the next one up. And this is Regina from New York. I am the CFO of a mid-sized company. What differences, if any, do you see in working with female versus male CFOs? Tamara, back to you on that.
In my career, I haven't actually seen very much differences between female versus male CFOs. But what I would say from the finance industry, looking at risk taking and portfolio hedge managers, is they've actually shown that female portfolio managers outperform male portfolio managers when risk adjusted based on a long-term, like 30-year sample. So maybe in that aspect, I might say that even though my personal experience hasn't been as much impacted female versus male CFOs, we do see that women are better at managing risks and yielding returns than male counterparts.
Wow. Celia, thoughts on that? You had any experiences in that?
Yeah, I also haven't seen much of a difference. I really think what does drive some differentiation in my interactions with CFOs is their background. You know, there are CFOs that are more controllership and accounting oriented, and there are CFOs that are more strategic and transformation oriented. So that's where I've seen some more nuance in how they think, how they engage, how they prioritize. But male versus female, haven't seen much from that dimension.
Good. I like that. It would be nice to not ever have to ask that in, wouldn't it be? So let's go to another question that came in and then a couple more that I have. So this is from Alexis from Needham, Massachusetts. Would you recommend a class in finance for everyone hoping to enter business? Celia, what do you think of that?
100%. So I've absolutely a class in finance, micro and macroeconomics, and I would also highly, highly recommend accounting fundamentals. I am not an accounting major, but I got my first job in accounting and really that to me is so foundational, because strategic decisions and conversations at the executive level are happening at that financial level, right? It's really down to the income statement, down to the balance sheet, down to the cash flow. So at a minimum, please do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So, Tamara, to you for a moment. You have spent your life doing fascinating things, and recently you decided to do something else that was fascinating and take a round the world trip. So tell us a little bit about how that has changed you and prepared you for the next big job.
Wow, that's an interesting question, Lorraine. I would say that my travels around the world have given me a deeper sense of self-assuredness that I will figure things out. My travels I started off in India, went through the Middle East, and I ended up in Europe. I did 12 countries in 10 weeks. And it also showed me how I have great ambition and also that I have physical limitations. So it's teaching me to be more realistic around my goal setting. So I'm not setting myself up for exhaustion and unhappiness. And I also think that the trip overall provided me with a level of self-confidence in my problem solving and execution skills. Because despite all of the planning and transfers, I had like little to no delays. Everything was lined up from like trains, planes, hotels, hostels, all the above. So all in all, I think this sets me up for my next opportunity to be able to take a leap of faith. And maybe internally, I might have a bit of imposter syndrome, but I'm now in a better position to follow my heart as well as my thinking mind, and step up to opportunities that I may not have had as much exposure to before because of this.
Amazing. So, Tamara, if you had to look, there are a lot of employees with burnout. I mean, certainly across the spectrum, and Celia, you see this too. If both of you could just think for a moment, and I'll come to you, Tamara, first, what would be a couple of tips that you would give to somebody who is in a job, whether remote or not, and is feeling burned out? So I lost somebody for a moment, but Tamara, why don't we go to you first, if you can hear me?
Yes, absolutely. From my end, there's something that I potentially could have done better, and I would advise someone who is facing burnout is to actually create those moments of stillness. I know it's so hard when you're pumping on all cylinders, but ask yourself really like what you want, what is necessary to do. 80/20, think about your role, why you exist, what problems you are there to solve, and sit down and have a conversation with your leader about your core responsibilities, what you can actually manage, and ask for your leader's support. And that's really where I would say would be like the top thing to check in with yourself and with your leadership to try to strategize and minimize the amount of burnout, potentially get resources. I would also say it's very important, probably the most important thing, to make sure that you're getting sleep, because your ability to problem solve and as a leader have the emotional bandwidth that you can have a level head to deal with whatever comes your way. Sleep is the most important thing you can do.
Yeah, I'm so with you, and we're all sleep deprived, I think. Celia, what would your tips and advice be to somebody who's experiencing burnout?
So I would say sleep, definitely number one. Two other points that I wanted to add to Tamara's comments. I agree with everything she said. Just a couple of things that have worked for me, if helpful for this group, is number one is having a conversation with my leadership and asking them, what does success look like for this role? Because I think I had a perception of what I think success would look like, but I think, especially during the pandemic, when we're in back-to-back meetings, there's so many converging priorities that were hitting my desk. I really had to take a step back and
and pull myself away from that. So frankly, I needed their help to help me prioritize, number one. Number two is a bit of self-awareness. Frankly, it's like really thinking about what energizes you and what doesn't, right? Because things that don't energize you, maybe those are things that can be delegated, or you can partner with someone else to better manage that workload. So those are my tips, and those have worked for me very well. In fact, my EWA sisters have given me quite a bit of advice on this as well, and I'm grateful for a lot of that coaching, Lorraine, around prioritizing and managing stress.
It's very important, and we are all in it for the long term. So having good health and ability to do exactly what you do really well at work is so important. I'm so grateful to both of you for being on with us today. You've given us some great tips, and I'm sure that our audience is also grateful to you for your insights and your honesty and telling us the way you really feel from the heart. So thank you, Celia. Thank you, Tamara. We look forward to having you on another show.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Thanks
so much. Thank you. Well, we have come to the end of our show, and we always enjoy hearing your questions from the audience. But I have a question for you today. And my question would be are you able to read a balance sheet? Do you understand corporate financials? So important. I think Celia and Tamara both said, if you want to succeed in business, you have to understand the numbers, and that's really important. So maybe think about, if your answer is no, taking an accounting class. I'm so happy to be able to share all these wonderful shows with you this year in 2022, and we're moving now to our calendar for 2023, so we'll be back with you to tell you all about that very soon in the next few weeks. We wish everybody a wonderful holiday season. We want you to please go onto Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music. Make sure you listen to our podcasts, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year. Have a great week, everyone.